Hi, everyone, and I'm deeply grateful to Dr. David Pelcovitz for taking the time out of what must be an extraordinary busy day in time to please help our parents in Israel and here, help them get their children through this terrible war. Um, Dr. Pelcovitz, I deeply, deeply appreciate it. Any advice you could give parents would be so helpful.
Yeah. And again, it's certainly hard for me to think straight about this because it's so profoundly upsetting. I could only imagine what it must be like if you're parenting a child who's living there or is in the thick of it. And I was thinking about just in my own family. There are a number of uh, you know, nephews and great nephews who were right in the thick of this and at all too young an age.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's really, about how do we handle anxiety and how do we think about this and talk about it. And the bottom line, which is probably could only sound trite, is that there's nothing quite as powerful as sharing your emotions. Um, it's all about listening. It's all about listening and hearing with an open, receptive ear and receptive heart what it is that their questions are. And you can't mess it up. There's no one right answer to give. There just isn't. One thing I know for sure is that it's impossible for them not to be aware of what's going on. And as a general rule of thumb, um, the question becomes then how do we help them manage their anxiety as we manage ours? And like everything else with this, the key is to talk openly about it. I have a daughter who's a psychologist in Manhattan in the Cornell and Columbia system in Manhattan. And she's become a fairly respected expert on trauma. And I remember um, during during 9/11, um, I was doing some research together with some other teams trying to understand what are little kids' exposure to this. And I was sure she had no exposure because we were very strict about not letting her or any of my young kids have inappropriate exposure. So we gave her the pilot measure that we were using. How often have you watched CNN? How often have you seen gruesome images of this? And I was shocked to hear that she was spending massive amounts of time, being exposed. And here I'm supposed to be this expert, and I had no idea what her exposures were. So today
No,
she specializes in this area. Sorry, yeah.
right. I know, no, it's right. What you're saying is so right. We don't know what our children know. Yeah, usually assume that they know more than we think they do. And I'm primarily thinking about the parents in Israel. I appreciate you making the time and to try to do this because I wanted to get it to the parents in Israel, where they can still watch it this evening if possible. So starting there, I mean, 9/11 was in our backyard here. Um, I just I I can't even imagine what it's like for Israeli parents. So what advice would you give to them?
Um, Basically, is to listen, to always start in any conversation about this by asking your kids, what do you know? What's your understanding of what's happening? What are you concerned about? The Hebrew word ashrei is etymologically tied to the word ishur, right? The highest level of happiness comes from feeling validated and understood. Here, it's just the images are so horrific, and the raw hatred is so horrific. And the only thing I could think of is I don't have any easy answers. Is look into your own heart, look into your own soul. ask yourselves, what do I find helpful in dealing with this unspeakable tragedy? And realize you can't mess it up. It's all about honesty and openness, very similar to our previous conversations about unspeakable kinds of abuse. This is in some ways so much worse in the sense that it's it's just hard to believe. It's like about a different worldview. It's hard to believe that there's such raw hatred and evil out there. And what does that say about how do we handle this, and how do we protect our children? But the main thing is you can't mess it up, because as long as you could talk about it, as long as you could name the monster, and be honest about it, and just facilitate a conversation, usually by starting, by asking them what they know. That's usually a very good opening kind of question. What do they know? What have they seen? And, kids may not be so anxious to talk to you about it because it's so painful, but we all know that they're talking to each other about it. We all know that, so yeah.
And how much should parents be sharing with the kids?
Well, I think if you start with asking them, what do you know? And you start with asking them, it's really about listening and using that as a cue to figure out what to share, because they know, they've just imagine yourself, even as a young kid, or as a very young kid, even as a 6, 7, 8-year old kid. Imagine if you were exposed to this, and this was something that there's just no protecting them from this horror. I know everybody I know, okay, just can't stop talking about this because we're trying to process the unprocessed, something that just can't be processed.
I remember my parents. I was just talking to Eddie on the way home, driving home from the kids last night. I remember um, I'm 64, so when I was 7, 8 years old when the Six-Day War started, and my memory was my parents getting up day or night and seeing my two parents. Before the war, everybody thought it was going to be, God forbid, that just total devastation. All the armies surrounded Israel, and the kid, I just remember them sitting at the table, looking like death. Listening to the news and with their faces drawn. I'm. In preparing for this talk, I was thinking of myself as a child trying to see things, seeing it through their eyes. My mother happened to be a very resilient, spunky person, and just seeing her glued to the radio it was just, I don't know, it made such an impression on me at the time. Imagine what the kids go, and every phone has got all kinds of horrible videos, not just
Right. And that's the big difference between then and now, because now it's not necessarily going to be filtered.
right.
The protective lens of our parents. I know your parents, were Holocaust survivors, right?
Not themselves, but their whole generation
Oh,
was.
they're that whole generation. Yeah,
They were in America, but Canada, but yeah, everybody. Look at
yeah, yeah, yeah,
all of our friends, parents, parents, friends were all.
yeah, yeah.
So what do we offer the children in terms of hope, or in terms of, I assume we shouldn't be telling them that everything is going to be all right,
No,
or
no, no, absolutely not. Um, but there's always hope. It's the meaning making part of this. You know, um, I think about this in terms of three broad areas. So one is the coping area. Okay, what helps them cope? And it's going to be very different for each kid, and it's going to be different at different times because this is going to be going on now for quite some time, unfortunately. So we have to. So I think one of the more helpful questions you could ask them is ask them how are you doing? How are you coping with this? And to let them know there's no one right way to cope. Was that beautiful thought from um, Rev Hirsch that it's not Kaylee Lama Azavtani, but Kaylee Lama Azavtani. So going from the why question to the what. What are you going to do? How are you going to find meaning from that? And nobody's going to be able to make any sustained meaning from this right away. But by facilitating conversation and letting them know that you're there for them, they could come to you anytime, day or night. We need to tolerate, temporary regression. They're going to probably want to be sleeping in the same bed as you for a while, which is there's almost nothing they could do at a time like this that doesn't come within the realm of normal reaction to an abnormal event. So
Could you, can I hear that again? What you said about the regression, meaning that emotional regression, meaning to go back to want to do things differently.
yes, yeah.
We shouldn't, no parents shouldn't say, oh, come on, like that's you're taking it over the top. Is that what you think?
Exactly. There's no reaction they can have at a time like this that that I can even begin to think is abnormal.
Really,
Look,
that's so important for parents to know. I remember we had two teenage daughters during 9/11, and they asked if they can sleep in our room.
yeah,
Fascinating. I forgot about it, I
yeah,
forgot about it.
yeah.
Of course,
And
we said yes,
yeah, which is exactly the right thing to do.
right?
And then gradually, as things, God willing, start to go back to normal, I know that, and they will. What we have that these horrible, Rishon don't have is we have a very strong sense of belief in meaning and purpose. Um, you know, we would never be capable of such evil. It's not what we're about. I was just thinking, you know, this is the week that they gave out Nobel Prizes in in medicine and in science and etc. And you think about look at the lists of Jews
Yeah.
who have some of whom have single-handedly been given credit for saving millions of lives with brilliant research and with also with having the kind of values that we really want our children to have. And that's why nobody's going to be able to ever take that away from us. And that's where our strength is. Our strength is in having a life of meaning. So there's the coping part, there's the creating meaning part, and there's the strong belief that we're all together in this. We're all together. I work very closely with Dr. Norman Blumenthal, who we co-teach some courses together at Yeshiva University's pastoral psychology program. So he often talks about how during times like this, the key is to be at each other's side. And he talks about how the lowest rate of PTSD is in firefighters and EMTs because they don't go on calls alone. They go on calls together. They're at each other's side. We just read that in Koheles.
Mishnayim and Echad.
Yeah, yeah,
We're
yeah.
better than one.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I heard a great thought about that. Dr. Pelcovitz was mentioning a verse that we just read in Koheles. The Tov Hashnayim and Echad, two are better than one. So, because if one falls, the other will be able to help him up. Um, I don't remember where I saw it, but it says there, She'im Yipolu, if they plural. If it doesn't say She'im Yipol, the correct grammatical term would be two are better than one, because if one falls, the other could pick him up. But it says Im Yipolu, that means even if both of them fall, they're still able to help each other. It's not that one person is up and one person is down. It's that they're together, so they're able to help each other, even though they're both in the same very challenging position. And when you said firefighters, that's what they do. That's what they do. They comfort each other. Um, Afterwards, God forbid, if there's a loss or if there's that's so fascinating. So they have the least amount of a very low level of PTSD because they have
PTSD.
that
Yeah,
camaraderie.
yeah, yeah. That's not amazing.
That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah.
So we convey this to our kids by just talking about it. We're a family, we're a community, we're a nation, right? Am I
Right.
hearing that correctly?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As I understand, and we're not alone,
I'm not alone.
and you can't mess it up, you know? Let's figure out what's the coping style that works best for you. Okay, is it sometimes it's going to be distracting yourself. Sometimes it's going to be talking it out, right? Uh, it says, what I often talk about in these situations is the Dagoblev ish yashchena, the idea that if you have a worry in your heart, so three times in the Talmud, there's a disagreement over the meaning of that. One is Yashchena Midato, the best way to deal with tough times is distract yourself. Think about other things, read books, whatever it is. And the other is Yasichena La'acherim.
To talk to others.
Talk it out. And you could go through the entire Shas, entire Gemara, you won't find anybody saying that one way is better than the other.
Right.
They're all good. They're all good, and they're going to change constantly. My guess is that if we could time travel to a year from now, okay, or we'll we'll be able to see in the rear view mirror, some of the some of the resilience that isn't all that obvious right now, but this is a very long-term kind of thing, very, very long-term kind of process. But what we have is gold. Because what we have a value system that's all about, the core ingredients of of meaning making and a chesed and a being at each other's side. I'm thinking about just in my own family, the many nephews and great nephews and nieces I have who were here when this happened, but had been in the Israeli army. They went crazy to try to get themselves onto
Right.
a plane to get to Israel on time. They just didn't let go, and that's all they're doing. They're driving everybody crazy to try to get onto the right flights. And I think to myself, like, wow, like that's think
And
about that. Think about what they're running to compared to what you know.
Bela and Mindy from my first cousins,
Yes, yes,
Bela
yes.
Block and Mindy
Right,
Ribner.
right, right,
We had
right.
a Horowitz barbecue, not a barbecue, like a picnic sort of, but one day Chalamoid this past Pesach, and all Horowitz cousins got together in a park. We sang our grandfather's songs. It was amazing. And 12 of those folks went to serve now. 12. It's so.
It's so heartening because it's like wouldn't you think that the first thing that they'd want to do is like, thank God we dodged this bullet.
Right.
We're living in the comfort of America, but people became obsessed. Everybody I knew, that age became obsessed with wanting to be at the sides of our people.
Well, I want to tell you, folks, I did a short video last night, early this morning, talking about what I've seen over the years in terms of the response of the Israeli public to a pigua, to a terrorist attack. And I'm telling you, it's one of the most inspiring. I'm going to get emotional. I'm going to try not to, whatever. It's one of the most inspiring things I've ever seen in my life. Like, you almost see no hatred there. It's a terrible sadness. And they they get together. I was unfortunately during the Intifada, some of these bombings in Jerusalem, 20 minutes later, people are singing Hatikva, and they have guys fixing the glass. They have the guys in 20 minutes. They're fixing the glass. We're opening. It's. I just saw it by the terrible tragedy of Pesach time. I went to the funeral, but it's just so incredible. What you said is real. I think it's something we really should talk to our kids about. Is our nations, the resilience, and this, like you said, the sense of mission, and how proud we are of the kids who are and adults who are leaving their families to go protect everyone. What should parents do if their kids did see horrible images?
Right, and the odds are the kids did.
Right,
Unfortunately, that's the
right.
nature of this. Um, be gentle about giving them the opportunity to talk about it. So just the simplest thing is to just ask, just to gently ask, you know, um, you know,
Did you say?
yeah, yeah. Or what did you see? Did you see? Don't be worried that that's going to traumatize them. Let them know, respect their right to remain silent. You know, um, and they might share it with you. They might not. But they might share it down the road. It might take a while till they're really ready to. But you have to understand that most kids know what's right for them. Remember, there are different ages that are going to deal with this very differently. So preschoolers tend to be very concrete. You know, they're more likely to blame themselves. Um, when you move up to school age kids, their focus is more going to be more on, what is the school age kid? What's the main thing for them? And it's to want to feel in control, but it's going to differ from kid to kid based on their temperament. And adolescents are really into meaning making. Um, but the key is if you model open communication and you model acceptance that there's no one right way to do this, um, you know, we have um, we have everything on our side. We have the value system. We have the deep sense of meaning and purpose. And I'm so optimistic that one day the life will probably not be the same. It will not be the same. But on the other side, there's every reason to believe that there's hope. I love the idea of the word tikva. Okay, so the word tikva, the Hebrew word for hope, is etymologically tied to the word kav or cord, meaning that we're never just dangling alone in the wind at the mercy of the currents. You know, there's that always gives me so much comfort to remember.
But I want you said that Tickfoot it goes to a chord because we're connected. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. The word tikva is, as I understand it, is there's a medrash I heard from Dr. Fox at in California, uh,
Sure.
and he quotes this medrash: "Hakol b'kivui." Every tough time is dealt with kivui, with hope. it says, Yisurim, tough times like this, still with hope. And he goes on to explain that the word kivui is tied to the word cord. So for example, I don't want to get too much in detail about this, but what's the letter, okay, that God puts on the forehead of Cain, okay, after
Okay.
that very first, you
Yeah.
know, the very first, death and
Murder.
murder in our community. Yeah, I shouldn't be um, sugarcoating it. And it's the letter Vav, because letter Vav is a hook, and it means we're never just dangling alone at the mercy of the current. There's always a meaning to what's going on, and where we always have the support of the support of everything that we believe in, the support of God, the support of everything. So yeah.
Hector, I thank you so much for your time. This was so helpful. Perhaps one of my big takeaways is validating what you said about that how it's so important for parents to hear this, myself as well, as a grandparent, to that there's nothing they can do of that tragedy, the response to it, that we should feel is over the top,
Right.
or is that what was the word you used? That temporarily?
Yeah. Yeah. There's gonna be a period of temporary insanity and
Right.
temporary regression.
Temporary regression. That's what you said, temporary
One,
regression. That they step
one,
back
yeah.
from that developmental phase and they really become kids, the teenagers that have this macho going on, might just revert to wanting to be children again and being told that everything's going to be okay.
Right.
Dr. Hashem should give you mazel and bracha and strength, and to all those in Eretz Yisrael, to our brothers and sisters in Israel. Hashem should comfort those who lost so much and heal those who are sick, return them, the hostages home safely, and protect our chayalim, our
Amen.
soldiers who are defending our people. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank
Best
you.
regards. Be
Thank you.
well.
Same here.